It's a good moment to start Ask Any. Welcome to the first mastermind class of the year 2021. It's a very special class for me. We'll be talking with the great Howard Sherman, who has an extraordinary history in the professional world of theater, from being a manager director to being a publicist, a journalist, a writer, and we are very fortunate to have come across his interest as he was researching to write his wonderful book, A New Day's Begun, about the 21st century and our town. We got a chance to talk about Miami Drama's production that ended up making it in the book, not only, but behind Howard, you can see the book. There it is, that he published, New Day's Begun. And you can see the lower part is our photo of our production of our town, which is extremely exciting. So I'm going to grill you, Howard. I want to know everything because I haven't read the book, because although I purchased it, it hasn't arrived. So I'm intrigued, and I'm going to have to, get as much information from you as I will, from reading it. So from everyone wondering what that teddy bear is behind me, I'm at my daughter's room because we had an issue with our office and construction going on. So, anyways, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Howard, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. And thanks to everybody from your production who took the time to talk with me. This book would not exist without the directors, the actors, designers who were willing to spend some time with me telling me about the work they did.
So how did it begin? Like, why our town?
I always say, I wish I had a good answer for this. The simple answer is I was approached about, was I interested in writing a book? And I sort of hit on the idea of our town and was convinced that I would do a little searching and find that there were all these books about our town. And then I'd have to come up with a different idea. So the shocking part was I didn't find books. There's a lot of Thornton Wilder books, and I think I found one book of academic essays about our town, but certainly none that took the approach that I decided to take, which was I didn't want to spend 200 pages telling people what I thought of our town. I'm not sure I had 200 pages of what I thought of our town, but what I wanted to do was talk to people who'd actually been involved in putting the show on, because what I've found, and I think anybody who works in our field knows, is that outside of the author, who of course is no longer available to us since Thornton Wilder passed away in the 70s, the people who know a play best are the people who work on it, because they spend hours and weeks preparing it, and then the actors spend weeks performing it. And then the other issue is that our town is so popular, so enormously popular, so constantly done in the US and around the world, that I had to make it manageable. And that's why I decided first to say that I was only going to deal with our town in the 21st century, and then really narrowed it down to 12 productions. I'm very clear about saying, I am not saying, no offense, I'm not saying these are the best productions of our town. I think it would be impossible for anybody to decide what the 12 best productions of our town are. These are 12 productions that I thought had interesting aspects about them. And so that's what the book is. I say all the time, I'm sure I could have written a book about 12 entirely different productions, and it would have been interesting, and 12 beyond that, and 12 beyond that, because it's done so constantly.
It's interesting. I mean, I have a couple of follow-up questions. One is, you think of the fact that there are no books about our town, this consistent notion that, people think of our town in a way as a lesser, as a lesser play. They don't take the seriousness that a Death of a Salesman or plays like that take, um, um, primarily because it's been produced mainly, the chunk of the productions are always coming from high schools. Why do you think that is? I mean, I'm surprised because I came across Our Town in my 30s. So like I read it and I was like, this is the best play I've ever read in my entire life. And I'm just surrounded by some people who were very jaded because they had approached it young, or like, I feel that Our Town doesn't have the spot in society that it should have of one of the best American works ever.
I think the people who've really spent time getting to know the play love the play. I think they feel very passionately about it. I think, however, not unlike Shakespeare to a degree, that if you have to study it in school, if it's fed to you as being good for you, or you should appreciate it, there's a resistance. I think that there is something about the older you get, perhaps the more you can appreciate the play, or more people can appreciate it. I didn't have an appreciation for it when I was young. I didn't have to study it in school. I didn't see it until I was in my 20s. And when I saw that production, I thought, oh, well, okay, now I know what Our Town is, but I wasn't blown away. Flash forward to my late 40s, and suddenly I see this play and I just think, my God, this is so extraordinary. And even to the point that production that I saw, which was David Cromer's production, which is also featured in the book, I admired it the first time I saw it. I was emotionally wrecked by it the second time I saw it.
Right.
So I think, as with any play, it's when we come to it. But yes, familiarity of Our Town, or even the just notion that we're familiar with Our Town. I was shocked by how many people who I interviewed for the book who knew nothing of the play until they auditioned for it. So as well known as it is, there are still plenty of people who get by it, but many people who've never read it and never seen it have decided what it is.
That's right.
They've got an impression of it. And that impression, those people, they have no idea what this play is about. They really don't.
Yeah,
So that's, I think all of what contributes to maybe not everyone appreciating it.
Why the 21st century? Why putting there, at the Y2K, why is that the
Well, it's not a bug. I mean, it was twofold. It was, as I said, it was just to narrow the field, because if I was choosing from productions from 1938 till now, it would have been more important.
I just say because, I mean, in my research, when I decided to do Our Town, actually I came across Our Town kind of by accident and then I saw, Gregory Mosher was one of my teachers, and I said, oh, Gregory did an Our Town, and then I saw it and I was like, this is so good. Like, I thought that Gregory Mosher, I think, what is it, 1988 Lincoln Center production, was just, again, I'm not a historian, but I got the feeling that was kind of one of the first times that Our Town was produced in a way that treated itself seriously. Would that be fair? Not, kind of, or a generation. It introduced Our Town to a generation in a serious way. Kind of had that shock that the David Cromer production had, 30 years later.
Again, if you've not seen it, or if you don't remember it correctly, it's always going to be shocking, because what people remember are the first two acts, and everybody seems to blank out on the third act. I think in part because it may be too painful to think about the third act of Our Town. So everybody remembers the Americana and the old timiness and all of that.
But I think like the Paul Newman production, I felt it's a little bit, I didn't, I mean, listen, I don't have I have to be in your position where I have to, but like, it's not a great, I don't think it's a great production. I don't think it has, what the Cromer, like, if you're going to do Our Town, there's got to be something new to it. And I think that Gregory Mosher discovered in the stage manager something that was new, that wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna tell you what. It was like, I have a secret. You know, the stage manager was saying like, I have a secret, and you don't know what it is. And
well, let me try to tease apart a couple of things you just said, because I do think that our town, every major production reaches a new audience, because I know people, there were people I interviewed for the book who had seen the David Cromer production, including one of the directors, several of the directors actually. And so that influenced them. Then there are people like David Cromer who cite Gregory Mosher's production as being so important to them. And then I talked to people who all remember it was broadcast on TV. There was a TV version in 1977 with Hal Holbrook.
With Hal Holbrook, right. But that's also very Americana. That's a very, no, I mean.
Well, it's funny. I mean, the Americanness,
yeah,
and I don't know whether we want to save this for when we bring in
right.
people, but I have started developing the theory that if you focus on the Americanness of the play, you're probably missing the very message that Wilder really made clear in his preface to the play. He wanted us to know this play is not an homage to early New England towns.
Right.
And that is what people, again, that's the false memory or explanation of what the play is about. It's not about life in New England at the turn of the 20th century.
It's not a Rockwell painting. It's not a Rockwell painting, right?
Well, it's again, well, exactly. The Rockwell painting comes up, the idea that it's a Rockwell painting comes up a lot. And you only have to read the script carefully to realize it's not a perfect town. It's not a town that is immune to change. It's not a town that is all the same. It is not a town that doesn't have people who aren't troubled. Right. So there's a lot there, but everybody just remembers the benign parts of the play, it seems, unless they've had a really deep experience of it. But what I was saying is, I do think with every generation, or frankly, with every production, you never know when it's going to hit you. There's a chapter about a production that was done by by Deaf West Theater and Pasadena Playhouse. And Jane Kaczmarek, who shared the role of the stage manager, told me right off a story about having seen it at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater in 1974. It was the first time she went to a play. She was on a date and she was just emotionally wrecked by it. Didn't know she was going to be a professional actor. She was still in high school, but that did it for her. And of course, what's so fascinating to me about the connectedness, once people really lock into our town, was that the production that she saw in 1974, the Emily, was an actress named Judith Light, who we all have come to know primarily through television, but, you know, multiple Tony Award winning actress, and so extraordinary. And I got to tell Judith about Jane's experience of seeing her and what it meant to her. And that's in the book. So there is this continuum of our town fans, our town groupies, people who try to live their life by the messages of our town, in part from having been in it or read it or studied it or what have you. But it is ongoing. The New York Times did a piece related to this book coming out, and they spoke with the actress Lois Smith, the fantastic, amazing Lois Smith. And Lois, it's no secret, Lois is now 90 years old. And Lois did the play when she was in college in 1950 in Washington State, when the play was only 12 years old. So it is a continuum, and you can find people at all points on the continuum. And if you talk to people, perhaps like me, who've seen it at various points, you realize when they became a convert. And I do like to use that word. I think people become converts. I think our town proselytizes us into a way of thinking about what Wilder wanted us to think about.
You know, one of I assume it's in your book, the high school production, that there's a documentary on it, OT,
Well, it's mentioned in the book. The only reason I don't go into it in any detail in the book is essentially OT could be a chapter in the book, but there is this wonderful, it's only about an hour-long documentary, and it is about this production in, if I remember correctly, it's Compton, California.
Right.
And it's definitely not where you might expect to see our town. It's people in dire economic straits. It's an extremely varied community ethnically. And again, it's the story about how these young people, guided by their teachers, came to really appreciate the message of this play. And that's what's
and it comes from the community. I mean, it's so, all across the world, there are people who've been kind of touched by the play. And then when they're producing the play, it kind of forms it's kind of like, if you're a Jewish person, like, you and I are, you go to, oh, there's a synagogue here in Boston. There's this idea that throughout the country, there is this, groups of people have been, you share something deeply in common with them, although you have nothing in common because both of you have been touched so much by the play.
Well, I mean, I noticed you didn't join us, but yesterday I did what I called a cast.
Oh, I was picking up my kid from school from 3 to 4.
I know we all have our things, but I wanted the opportunity to gather as many of the people who I interviewed for this book, the vast majority of whom I interviewed one-on-one, and just to have 30 minutes where as many of them as possible could at least see each other and hear each other's voice. And some people had a little something to say about their experience of the play, and some of them were saying hello to people. And yeah, that was a screen filled with a couple of dozen people who had done the play across the United States and in London over a span of 19 years. And their common connection was our town. But many of the people in the book say, I mean, they've all done lots of plays. And again, you and I know this, every time a play is done, you create a community.
Right.
Everybody comes in from all over the place, unless you have a repertory company. Everybody comes in from all over the place. And over the course of a rehearsal and a performance period, they bond or don't bond.
Right.
Sometimes. But
a community is formed.
Every production is community theater.
Right.
The only thing that changes is how we define a community. And so whether it is a professional production that is professionally cast, or it is a school production where the community is defined and limited by the number of students who are in the school and then self-select to try to be part of the play, it's a community. But it does seem, and people talked about this in the book, that this play brings everyone to a place where everyone's pretty happy. Everybody feels pretty special to be a part of it. One of the actors in the book commented that every time they hear about a production of The House of Bernarda Alba, everybody's miserable because it's a play about a group of women at each other's throats for 2.5 hours.
Right.
But with our town, you're in service of something definitely greater than yourself. And it's sort of hard to be unpleasant when you're living in Grover's Corners.
It's spiritual without being religious, right? It's like the great, civic, non-religious spiritual play ever, because it really touches upon those things without, mention of religion or anything. It questions our existence. It questions, and you just said something really beautiful, which is, is that every time we do a play, we form a community. That community begins, that community ends. We tear the set down and we move on. And that in a way is a cycle of life. Like it's a cycle of the play. We begin, we grow, and we die. And that cycle, I think that's why theater people we're used to things beginning and ending. And when the pandemic happened, I think that theater folks, we understand what it is to take everything down. I felt maybe in a larger scale, obviously, but a feeling that I've had already of like something that ends when I don't want it to end. And you know what I mean? There is something to it.
Well, It ends in the sense that we are not all together all the time when a show ends. But again, as the play suggests, we go on. And I do think that, if you gather together the cast of, I'm just gonna pull a play out of the air. If you suddenly pull together four different casts of Equus,
Right.
they're not gonna probably spend their time talking about what Equus meant to them personally. They may talk about, what did the horses look like in your opinion? With Our Town, because the play is about a philosophy, to follow on what you just said, I refer to it in the book as a secular theology. Yes, religion is mentioned in the play because we know that the town is 85 or 86% Protestant, and there's perhaps 5 or 6% Catholic, and then, and then a group that are indifferent. But even though it's that specific, even though we have certain hymns that are written into the play, it doesn't spend time on ritual. And so it passes over us, whether we're Jewish, whether we're Buddhist, whatever we may be. We're not having a particular interpretation thrown at us. And so when the play speaks to larger issues, it is absolutely spiritual, but it is devoid of ritual and dogma in a way that, and it synthesizes sort of what's at the core of most religions, if not all religions, which is, who are we in this world? And what does that mean if we go on to another world? And it's also sufficiently spiritual without being religious, so that even if you are not a believer in any particular faith, you're not going to sit there and say, well, I don't accept this because I'm an atheist. It's a little of it, as I say, it's a synthesis. It's a boiling down to something that's at the basis not only of religion, but a lot of philosophy. I'm not well read in philosophy. Much smarter people can probably talk about this, but it's about who we are and what gives our life meaning.
The beauty of Our Town is, not only does Thornton Wilder try to go, to attempt at those large questions, but he also attempts at the small questions, right? At like what it is to be next to someone that you really like and be nervous and maybe impulsively decide to change your life because at that moment that's what you wanted. I mean, I think that the beauty of Our Town is also the small questions, like the husband and the wife and I mean, those really small details of being alive are as important of what's going to happen to us afterwards, how we die, etc. No?
And it's a boiling down, so there's not so much detail that you can say, well, I'm not like those people. What I discovered from having looked even, and my book is not a literary exploration of Our Town. It's really the reflections of people who've been part of Our Town. But I did look at, in fact, Wilder's original handwritten first full draft of the play. I've looked at the original published script, which Wilder then revised, and the original published script is no longer able to be performed. But what I watched was, in looking at these versions, was a winnowing down, a simplification, not in a reductionist way, but he was constantly taking away details that might take people away from the core, rather than focusing and focus on those little things. So, one example I give, which I find fascinating and in some ways wish we're still in it. At one point, there was a reference in the play to the Merchant of Venice, which is no longer there. It's not in the play anymore. And since you've acknowledged that we're both Jewish men, as a Jewish man, I loved the idea that the people of Grover's Corners would have known about anti-Semitism. Now, I understand why it's not there. And there are other references to oppressed peoples. On a personal basis, of course, Merchant of Venice works for me. but I also understand why it's gone. So it's completely fascinating. You know, it on the surface, it can seem, especially for the first two acts, like you're not even sure why you're watching this story. And then you come to Act Three, and I'm careful. I don't say a lot about Act Three. I do in the book because I figure no one's going to read this book.
Right.
That's
right.
But I'm careful in talking about it here because if people haven't read or seen Our Town,
Right.
I hope they'll experience it. And if they can't experience it live, there's so much we can't experience live now. I urge them to either watch that 1977 TV version, which is on YouTube, so anybody can watch it, or find, I think you can find on streaming, the Gregory Mosher's production from 1988, or the Westport Broadway production with Paul Newman from 2002, because those are clear representations of the play. You can decide whether you like one more than the other. I make no judgment on any of that. The only judgment I make is don't watch the 1940 movie.
Yeah, that's
that. I think anybody I say that to, I can't possibly offend anybody because it was so long ago, but I say it only because they changed the ending. And it just doesn't play. And also, when you translate this story into a movie form, when you make it as concrete and fill out the world with scenery and with props, it's a distraction. And Wilder was smart enough to know, minimize the distractions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, I still favor, just because I think Gregory Mosher is, one of the best theater makers ever. I actually cheated during the play. I would call Gregory constantly, and I was, Gregory, I can't figure out this scene. And Gregory spoke to me as if it was yesterday that he remembered the names of everyone. Like, it's unbelievable. And he brought to me, this idea, you were talking about, you were just mentioning about how it, the ritualistic part of religion are kind of not focused on, and the whole wedding scene, the actual wedding, we see the wedding before the wedding, right? That's kind of the,
and we hear how everybody, the bride, the groom, the mothers, aren't keen on weddings. And we've already heard Editor Webb talk about the rituals of a wedding, and he doesn't really understand them. There is skepticism even in that ritual. But the play also says most people go to their graves 2 by 2. The idea of bonding, the idea of love, the idea of being together, absolutely. Wilder goes for that. The ritual and trappings of marriage, of that ceremony, are what he's not so sure of. Since we're doing a Gregory Mosher Appreciation Society moment, I had a fantastic conversation with Gregory, but of course his production was in the 20th century, not the 21st. I got a lot of grief from some people that I wasn't profiling his production. I actually had a major regional theater director, who I shall leave nameless, yell at me over the fact that I wasn't including Gregory's. But let me just read you, because we had a great conversation. I boiled it down, but I think it's a fascinating way of looking at this play. Gregory, and now I'm reading, drew distinct parallels between Wilder and Samuel Beckett, between Our Town and Waiting for Godot. Wilder anticipates the death of 60 million, said Mosher. Beckett responds to the deaths of 60 million people. He went on to further illuminate the connection, first by quoting Beckett. They give birth astride of a grave, the light gleams an instant, and then it's night once more. That's the plot of, to the degree that there's a plot, which isn't much, of Our Town.
I mean, and Gregory, that's why I'm telling you, Gregory, he said Our Town was written in 36, 30.
Primarily in 37, and it premiered in 38.
38. It premiered in 38, it was written in 37. Europe in 1938 was place of darkness. And Wilder was in Europe for most of 36 and
Did
37.
the bulk of the writing of the play in Switzerland and some in France. He obviously had to know what was happening in Germany at that time.
Right.
And as people have pointed out, not only that, but let's remember that the world was still dealing with the Depression. It wasn't perhaps as deep as it was in, say, 33, but the world didn't really fully come out of the Depression, weirdly enough, until the war began.
Right.
Because it was defense production and all of that really changed the economy. But you're dealing with a world dealing with depression. You're dealing with a world dealing with the rise of the horror of the Nazis. And he wrote this play. He wrote this play that people want to simply look at as this benign piece of Americana. He's smarter than that. He's subtler than that. And that's part of the lens that I would think you as a director or anybody taking on this play has to consider. And that's also part of the lens that makes this play important and reflective of any time it's in, because it may be nominally set in a small town in New England at the turn of the 20th century, but it is really about the earth, the solar system, the universe, and the mind of God. It does not deny the idea of a deity. It just doesn't tell you how to consider that deity.
Right. Well, that's a beautiful way of ending this segment. Before we introduce our secret weapons, our surprise guest today, we have the wonderful Martin Lewis and the great Tali Santesteban. Guys, if you could turn on your cameras now. We're talking about the two leads, our leads in our town, Emily and George, who played beautifully on the stage of the Colony Theater. And by the way, Martin always came and left with his bicycle. So it's beautiful that I see your bicycle there behind you. So this has been a conversation. This was more than me interviewing you, Howard. This has really been a conversation. But from here on, you lead the conversation and we respond to your questions.
Sure.
This is the cast, the Emily and George of Miami New Dramas production of Our Town. It's 2017, right?
Yeah. 2017, yeah.
2017, which has been, I think one of the most important productions that Miami New Drama has done. If not the most important, Samuel French recently published our version, our trilingual version of Our Town. And we are lucky enough to be featured in the book of the great Howard Sherman. And I want to be, I want everybody who's joining us today to think of purchasing that book, because I think it's an outstanding work of investigation, and I can't wait for my copy to be. So maybe Viana can just put there in the chat where you can find the book. I assume, Howard, Amazon. Is that a good outlet for?
Any bookstore should be able to get it for you. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it directly from the publisher. You can order it on bloomsbury.com. You can go to, any independent bookstore and tell them that you want it. I mean, they may have to order it. This is not a Stephen King novel. It's not going to be in every bookstore. It's certainly not going to be available at airports and train stations, but
it's on Amazon, and you're like, is it already shipping from Amazon? Is it already shipping?
It's not only already shipping, it's already sold out on Amazon, and they're waiting for more.
Sold out on Amazon. That's amazing. So
as of this morning, it's about a 2-week wait to get the book, unfortunately.
Fortunately. That's amazing. That's great to hear. And here it is. There's the Amazon link if you want to just wait those 2 weeks on Amazon. It's shared on the chat. All right, so we
on Kindle.
The second act.
The second places that get electronic books, you can get it immediately. You get it on Kindle, wherever you buy your electronic books, the Google store, the Apple store, apparently all have it. I'm not a Kindle user. I'm not an ebook reader. I like paper. I like things on my shelves. So, so now let me sort of turn the tables a little bit for a conversation. We didn't have Thalys and Martin in a soundproof booth. So I hope they were hearing everything that we were talking about before. And to a degree, I'm going to do a little of what I did in the book, but I'm curious, Martin and Thalys, you heard Michel talk about when he first encountered the play and what his experience of it was. I did ask you this for the book, but let's do it again. What did you know of Our Town before you got a call to audition for Michel? And, what did you think you were going in for other than employment?
Do you want to go, Martin?
No, I was going to let you go.
All right. I had never heard of Our Town before, except for we were supposed to do it in college, but because a bunch of people quit my class, we didn't do it because we didn't have enough actors in my company. But other than that, I had never heard about it. And I was actually on a road trip with a few friends, including my now husband. I was in the middle of Montana and I kept getting calls from the casting agency. I was like, I'm on a road trip. Sorry, I can't tape a video. And they're like, just do it like outside, whatever, just on your phone. I was like, okay, like I'm gonna be in a t-shirt. I don't have makeup. It's gonna be on a phone. They're like, it's totally fine. Just tape the video. And we were in a motel in Bozeman for that day. And we had like 30 minutes before we had to leave to tape it. I was like, okay, well, tell me quickly what it's about. And my friend Chelsea just kind of ran it down for me. She's like, in the first one, I think you're a kid, and then you're a teenager, and then you're dead. It's like, okay, let's go. And Jason, my husband, read with me, and he was more worried about his own Spanish because we were doing some of the scenes in Spanish. And I was like, it's fine, you sound fine. It doesn't matter how you sound, let's just get it done. And then I still didn't read it for like a month until I got cast in it. And I was like, oh, I should probably read it now. And I actually remember reading it for the first time. I remember sitting on my bed in a house that I used to live in with like 8 other actors and just weeping by the end, me like, oh my God, I can't believe I get to go do this play now.
Damn. Wow. My introduction to Our Town, I was thinking about this. I had actually had a chance to see a production of it when I was younger in high school. A friend's parents took me to see a SAG production of it. I was for a bit, but I don't remember much of it. It was pretty kind of, in and out. I was excited to be there, but I didn't remember too much of it. And then when I got the call to audition for Miami, I had just finished school and I was doing Shakespeare up in Connecticut. And so I had to take a train back from Connecticut to New York to audition and then hang around Manhattan for a little bit to meet Michel, who had just flown in. And I remember being so drawn to the simplicity of the language and the simplicity of the situation, because the audition we worked on was the soda pop, just soda pop scene. Man, I just remember falling in love with the idea of falling in love with like the starting of something big. So that's really what hooked me. And then me and Michel, the handshake, and then boom, off to Miami.
Yeah, when people did handshakes back in the day.
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Funny, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of okay for me to say it now, but I casted the show, and Martin I loved immediately, and then I wasn't very sure on who would play Emily, and I ended up deciding for this one actress, and then after I sent the offer, the next day I received like, oh, I'm sorry, this is late, we couldn't get her to do one, and then they showed me Thalys, and I was like, shit, like this is exactly So I asked my producer, I said, listen, I mean, I'm not gonna take away the contract, but like, if they ask, let's just not be, we do whatever contract we do, but like, say no to everything else that they say, like my own room, no, my own this, no. So I kind of forced the other actors to drop. It's kind of shitty of me, but I just really like, it was an important play. And when I saw Talis, I was like, yes, this is the Emily that I think, this makes like, and it at the end of the day, it's, Our Town gets drawn by who plays Emily and who plays George. That's the spirit of your production. In the same way that you can't do Hamlet without knowing who your Hamlet is going to be. That's going to be the key to your Hamlet or Death of a Salesman. I mean, so I felt that I needed to know even more than the stage manager who my George and who the Emily were going to be. And I'm very happy that the other actress, poor soul, she's a terrific actress, but she dropped, and then we got that.
I'm going to ask a question, which will probably then take up the rest of this segment as you talk about it. But before I do, I just want to remind people that I do see we've got a couple of questions that have come in, and we will be getting to questions in about 15 minutes or so. So if you've written in, please don't think we're ignoring you. And if you haven't written in, the moment you think of something or hear something that you're curious about, please, by all means, go ahead and use the chat function and send us a question. So here's the big question. What was so special and compelling and frankly made me want to include your production was that it was trilingual and that it was done in English and Spanish and Creole, which also broaches a topic of one of the phrases that I heard a lot from people as I was doing interviews, which is, this is such a white play. And even people saying, I don't want to do this play because it was a white play. I didn't see myself in it. And this is everyone from professional actors to men in the production that I saw at Sing Sing Correctional Facility. So Michelle, in terms of how you decided to approach it, Talis and Martin, in terms of what you saw in it, is this such a white play that it cannot speak to other communities, or?
Yeah, not at all. I mean, not at all. And I think that's an easy cop out for people to say that this is a white play. Listen, in general, there's a big problem in America with a lack of representation in theater of others, quote unquote. But I think that Thornton Wilder was writing about humans. And, one of my other favorite works of Thornton Wilder is A Bridge of St. Louis Rey. We just, produced an adaptation of it with David Greenspan a couple of years ago. And that takes place in, colonial Peru. And it's not about colonial Peru. That's not about what, the Bridge of St. Louis Rey. The Bridge of St. Louis Rey is about being alive on Earth. And Our Town is not about, the provinces north of New York in the turn of the century. It's about being alive. And, I wasn't trying to respond to, this white work or this very Anglo work. It was, no, this work is much more than what you think it is. You know what I mean? In fact, it can be performed by any community anywhere, and it will feel like it was written for that community. Because, and again, when a Haitian family would or a Cuban family would, you got exactly how my family was on stage. You drew that perfectly. And I was like, I did nothing. Like Thornton Wilder just drew what a human being is. And because we put your accent and your color, you saw yourself. But that's not our work. That is Thornton Wilder describing a human. We're all human beings. We all have the exact same feelings of being next to someone we like and feeling nervous and willing to change our whole, you know, future for this one moment here where we don't want her to make her feel bad, and then suddenly that decision affects the rest of your life. Like we do all that all the time. We you know, we grieve for our death. We remember our those who departed. Like we, all of us do the same exact thing because all of us are human, and this is an extremely human story. So it was more about, you know, doing an art town that reflected our community and that proved also, if I was responding to something, it was, you know, this was done during the Trump presidency. It was more a response to Trump presidency than anything else that says we all belong. You know, we all belong in Grover's Corner. We all belong in America. We all belong in the theater. And that was our way of making it a production for our community that would make sense for our community, because the play is so generous that it allows yourself to do that.
So, you know,
go ahead, Chloe.
It's interesting to me that I've learned how white our town is after I did Our Town. Mm-hmm. And my only experience with this play was that production at Miami New Drama. I've never seen it since then. Like, so to me, and that's the most diverse cast I've ever been a part of, probably. So to me, that's not how I think of Our Town at all. And it's hearing you guys talk about it a little bit, it makes me think, like, how many things do we have the preconception that these are white stories meant for white people, told by white people, when in reality, if there's humanity in a story, then it doesn't matter how we tell it now. So it doesn't matter if a Jane Austen play or whatever is told by all white people or not, or we can switch that and try to, because for me, I had the opportunity to look at this play for the first time under these very diverse circumstances. So then to me, it wasn't like, ooh, wow, cool. Like, what a new take on Our Town. It was just, that's how it was. I never even questioned it. I don't think it ever occurred to me until maybe until interviewing about it later on or for the book or something, like, oh wow, I guess it could be considered a very white story if you take it like very literally, like, so yeah, it's interesting, and it makes me think, how many other stories have we just have been told in the same way for so long that we miss an opportunity to tell them in a different way that brings them back to life almost, and back to being relevant for today.
Yeah, I mean, that's off that, that's how I always thought Shakespeare was. And even when I was introduced to Our Town, when I had first seen it, it was with an interracial couple. So I never really, I got the picture of the Rockwell element of Our Town, but when I was doing the play, two things came to me. One was George's story is a story for, at least it was familiar to me, in the sense that I was just embarking on this new journey. I was just beginning to, like, at the time, I was just beginning to fall in love, and like I was figuring out all these elements of life that got me excited. Like, to me, that was just the quintessential human story that George was doing and feeling. And then the second part, when I got to Miami, I didn't realize what Michelle was doing with the production, but it made sense. It was a complete reflection of all the people in Miami. Like, once I got to Miami, I started riding around and checking out neighborhoods like Opa-locka, Hialeah, Little Haiti, South Beach, and I was just like, oh snap, this is what representation looks like. And it got me thinking that when we did the school performance, it made sense why the students had the reaction that they did, because I don't think when I was in high school I'd ever seen that. My first Broadway production that I'd seen in high school was Bye Bye Birdie. Don't get me wrong, Bye Bye Birdie is a lovely musical. It was all white folks singing about 1950s. I don't know how to relate to that, but
it's pretty nice book.
I don't know how to necessarily relate to that, although that is really what drew me into theater. I wanted to do that. I wanted to perform. But if I had seen a production like Our Town, that would have been explosive for me. And it like in the following years, in 2018, 2019, I started seeing this revolution of more Black bodies, more people I care about, more people on stage. And I was like, my God, this is revolutionary, because these stories that we thought were white, they were just stories about humanity populated by white folks. I still don't know why that is the case, but the fact that there was a transition happening, I mean, it was lovely. It's exciting. it's inspiring. Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting with our town. And I go into this a little bit in the book because there's a bit of history. I didn't spend really focused on these oral histories, but I did a little bit on the background of the play. And the play almost instantly was being translated into other languages and done in other countries, even before World War II. World War II obviously stopped it. There was less production in those years, but it was taken up very quickly, and presumably not because all of these countries wanted to show life in the United States or wanted to tell white stories. Obviously, our perspective on theater in the US, we don't want an all-white theater in our writing, in our directing, in our acting, in any aspect of it. And stories that are Eurocentric or Caucasian-centric are being reconsidered, and what does make a classic and what doesn't. So it's really interesting to hear you talk about it, because what I could not do, I knew I could not do in this book, was I could not say what I thought the play could mean to people who weren't white New Englanders. I allowed other people to talk about it, but there's no point in this book where I say, see how it works. But it is interesting to know that aside from those international productions, there was a production in 1960 in Puerto Rico. There was a production in 1968 in downtown Los Angeles with a completely multiracial cast. Now, in 1968, that's quite extraordinary. On the immediate heels of the civil rights movement, at a time of great political unrest, this play was being done, and certainly in Wilder's lifetime, which means that Wilder was cool with the idea that this didn't need to be exactly what a town in New Hampshire would have looked like in 1901, 1904, and so on. So I think, I hope, you mentioned Shakespeare, Martin. I'm of the belief that this may become our first quote unquote Shakespeare play, in the sense that people may do a lot of things with it, but the core of it is unchanging. Julius Caesar is not a historical drama. Well, it is a historical drama, but it is not a history of Rome. It's an interpretation of Rome filtered through people's knowledge of Rome in the late 1500s, early 1600s. Yes, our town, parts of it are absolutely about a play that was written and first produced in 1937, 1938. But can it speak to people? And are there countless ways of doing it, obviously without making it too laden with distractions, that can allow it to speak. Right now, you'd be interested to know there's production that starts in 2 days in Brisbane, Australia. And the stage manager is being played by an Indigenous Australian who grew up on an island off the coast of Australia. What you said, Michelle, about you were focused on George and Emily, and I think, of course, that's important. But I think who guides you through this play can also make a huge impression on how you perceive it, which is why we now see women as the stage manager. We see people of color as the stage manager. I saw a reading of the play with an entirely trans and non-binary cast. There seems to be a way that this play can speak to everyone, but we are at a time where rightfully the field is starting to rebalance, and whether this play makes it through the rebalancing, maybe it goes out of favor for a little bit. I hope not, but maybe people will come back to it too.
Yeah, amen. I mean, I definitely have seen in the chat, I've seen a lot of hate for our town precisely because of that, and it saddens me a lot. People say, well, the way you did it, no, but still it's we have a serious issue with race in this country that has, unfortunately, it'll still take us quite a bit to reckon with. Um, you know, we can spend the whole other mastermind talking about, you know, race and the theater, and how, you know, most of the regional theaters in America are white institutions with subscribers. The subscribers run the theater, right? I mean, you ran a theater. You gotta, you know, Miami Drama. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of subscribers. We don't look that model. We really go play by play, because otherwise, you are always, you know, your constituency. They hold your purse. They are, you know, so if you start to produce things that they don't like, they unsubscribe, and that you can't, you know.
Well, we could argue the benefits and risks of a subscriber system, because I did work at one theater where what we did was realized we weren't going to be all things to all people, and we had to curate an audience for the kind of work that the theater wanted to do.
Right. To curate that audience takes time. That's what I mean. But it takes time but a lot of those theaters, those regional theaters, were built with a certain, you know, Miami's a great example in general for any story, because we are America, but on steroids. So, you know, in the 1950s, Miami was mainly a white Anglo city. It was a resort town. Then it became different things. And for a while, it was very much a Jewish town. It still is to a certain degree, especially Miami Beach. You know, it has transformed itself into multiple things. But if you look at Miami-Dade County now, only 10% of Miami is white Anglos. Right? So the Cockrell Grove Playhouse was huge in the 1950s, and then it went bankrupt. And the reason it went bankrupt is not because there are less people in Miami. In fact, Miami's population has exponentially grown. It's because that audience that they were used to performing to didn't exist anymore, or didn't exist to the degree that it existed. So the rest of the other theater companies were still trying to get that 11% of white Anglos, where Miami New Drama is saying, no, there's 100% of people here. And, you know, that's the reason of our exponential growth, is that we see the community entirely. But so a lot of those regional theaters have been created 60, 70 years ago. And they, remember Zelda, oh yeah, well, like 50, 60 years ago. And, you know, and they are tied to that group. So, you know, 50 years ago, America was 80% white Anglo. Now it's close to 50. And so, you know, those theaters are starting to begin to have the crisis that Miami already had of, wait, we are a bigger audience now. How do we get everyone? And those big regional theaters have a hard time, you know, because they're so big, have a hard time moving, no?
Well,
and it seemed to me, Michelle, and I, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed to me while we were there that Miami New Drama was one of the first theaters in Miami that was actually doing productions that unified all the different cultures of Miami. Like, from hearing from the other actors that were local to Miami, that's what they would talk about, that this was a new experience for them, because typically the theater was still very segregated. There was still like the white theaters did the white plays, and then other theaters did the like.
In our town, our budget is less than $1 million. Now our budget is $4 million a year, and that, you know, completely, you know, any other theater in Miami's budget is close to 1 million or so. You know, maybe so, but meaning that diversity is good for business.
Well, let me toss in something. This is a question that we've been asked, and we have an earlier question that I will get to, but this is sort of on topic. Cami writes, interracial and multicultural, the story of our town is always promoted as universal, and that's where my problem lies. I can't see a successful production being done in Scandinavia, specifically because of the deeply entrenched concept of, and I will mispronounce this, hygge, passed on from generation. I know there's a song about it in Frozen, but I can't remember the pronunciation. The deeply entrenched concept of hygge, passed on from generation to generation, that contradicts Act 3 with its message to treasure life before it's too late, and the stage manager saying nobody does that while they're alive. On the contrary, the Scandinavians learned from an early age to be content with whatever life brings them. Do you see a contradiction here with the message of our town?
Huh.
I have a fact to throw in, but I'd rather have you respond. Basically, I think what Cami is saying is, if people already have an appreciation for how special life is and what the important things are in life, is our town not universal to them because it's, I think in a way she's saying, is it simply redundant and therefore doesn't read?
I mean, I would, let me see. I find it hard to believe that after any wonderful experience happens or you meet someone, after that's done, I think there's always a sense of I could have done more. We could have spent more time together. Like I maybe that's how, in Scandinavia, it's completely, you know, zen and happy and that's all. And there's no sense of loss ever. Like that to me is a little, I think the sense of loss and wanting to create a life is still there. And even with the philosophy that our town is trying to say, even if that philosophy is already in the culture, I think to me it would just reiterate that, I suppose. Like maybe not, and again, maybe not every single line is relevant or every single line in the play. And I'll still say that here, not every single line, there were lines I had to say that were difficult for me to say because I don't agree with them and they're dated and I didn't like saying them and I had a hard time wrapping my head around how to do that. So not every single line in the play is relevant or appropriate, but I think to me the overall themes still are relevant.
Howard, I don't want to steal your thought, but I kind of have this feeling that wasn't it produced in Sweden, like even before it was one of the first productions. I'm not sure it was Sweden, but it was somewhere.
It has certainly been produced many times over the years, and in fact, there is, if I'm remembering my own book correctly, and the fascinating thing that I've learned, because I've never written a book before, is you can write your own book and then forget things you've written. But I'm pretty sure one of the things I read was that there was even a TV movie of our town in Norway. Now, again, I don't think that in any way mitigates Cami's question. I don't want us in any way to seem dismissive of it. And it is an interesting question, but you know, how is it that the play distills from many societies this core message of appreciating what life gives us? Is that different everywhere we go? Is that, for example, in the Caribbean communities, is that so different? Or you know, is our town introducing us to something new? Or is it reminding us of something that we all may have been told at one point, but in the day-to-day of life, we do sometimes forget? And again, we're not in conversation with Cami, and I do want to go on to some other questions, but it is a question of, even if it's something that people are brought up to understand, can we remain aware every minute of appreciating life?
Right. Yeah. I know. But also there's different layers to our town. I mean, also even in a theatrical approach to it, it's radical, right? I mean, you have a stage manager that interacts with the audience, that asks questions, that tells the story. You know, there is a whole. You know, I think that, yes, maybe the point of our town is that, you know, or one of the strongest themes is the fact that, you know, that wonderful, powerful speech that Tallis beautifully, you know, did of Emily, or, you know, Goodbye World, and, you know, but even, I mean, I can't imagine, even if you know that life is precious, you know, just seeing this, it will break your heart all over again, you know.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely more the latter, to what you said, Howard, that it's reminding us of the importance of this fact of life that we all instinctually know. It's a reminder, not necessarily like trying to teach anything new. It's not. It's not new to care about people. But I know at the place that I was at in 2017, I had just graduated college and I was starting this career. And once the pandemic had started, I had realized that the home and the people that I was I was forged in, my family, my friends, those people I had steadily been moving away from. And this pandemic, it really has reminded me of the importance of loving, and the importance of remembering that you're not only a human being trying to work and make this money and hustle, but you're also a son, you're also a brother, you're also a friend. It's like those simple things that we seem to think is so trivial. Just a quick side note, like not a quick side note, but like related to the story, this pandemic, I was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney disease. So I went through 6 months of chemo, and I would not have been able to do that on my own. And so my family was my family, my friends, they were my foundation, they were my support system. And if I had been moving in the same way I was in 2017, working, trying to become an actor, trying to be in the spotlight, I don't think it would have dawned on me how important these people are and how important life is, how important those tiny things of just waking up in the morning and making breakfast with someone you love, walking in the park, walking in the sun, how important, like water, how important all that, those tiny things are. So yeah, that's
Now,
point.
we have a question that's been here for a bit, but I'm wondering, maybe Michelle, can you read it? Because it's really a question for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes. You mentioned that many of the interviews were one-on-one. Could you share a little about how you wove those interviews into the conversation arrangements in each of the oral history chapters? Were you looking to put voices in conversations or more looking to build an arrangement? I noticed the breaks that mirror a sense of dialogue in the interviews. And I wonder if you think of each oral history as a little directed play community. And thank you for the book. Such a beautiful, useful piece, Leah.
Well, thank you, Lita. And it sounds like you've seen the book, which not many people have yet. But I mean, there's sort of a few things to answer in there. Yes, the vast majority of the interviews were one-on-one. I found it was more successful, frankly, to talk to people one-on-one, because as soon as you put two people in a room and you're trying to probe their experience, it becomes about their common experience. And I wanted to hear from each person. Roughly, every oral history goes from rehearsal through performance. Every single interview started with the same question. And that question was exactly what I asked here. What did you know of, or what was your experience of our town before you did this play? That was my jumping off point. Then, because I've done a lot of interviews in other formats, I do have this tendency to go where the people want to go. So if they start talking about something, I will question them about what they've told me rather than sitting with a list of questions that I want the answers to. That would have made it perhaps easier to structure, but I think it would have been less revealing. Do I think that these are a script? No, because first of all, it's not dramatized. These are people giving their insight. I think it's meant to be read. It would be a totally different experience if they were little playlets. I will say, people have asked me if there's going to be an audiobook, and which I'm flattered by. But one of the challenges is I don't know the complication of doing an audiobook of an oral history when the vast majority of the people in the book are actors. Either I have to find one person who can embody everyone, which, no disrespect to those people who read books like that. But when 80% of the book is 115 voices, and most of those people are professional actors, either I have to get people to record what I put of them into the book, and because I removed Every time somebody said or somebody said like, or somebody started sentences over and over and over with the word and, it's not exactly what I have on the recordings I used for transcripts. So I can't just take what I recorded and edit it into something either. So it's complicated, but I don't think it's a play. So ultimately, how did I weave them together? I looked at what I had, and I started and where they went. And when people look at the book, not every chapter follows the exact same pattern, because, for example, the Paul Newman production is about what was it like at Westport, what was it like on Broadway, and a little bit of what was it like to shoot it for television. The paired productions at Louisiana State University and the Youth Company of Theater Baton Rouge, that's the one place I intentionally paired people up, because I had two parallel productions. And so I interviewed the Simon Stimsons together. I interviewed the Emilys together because they had been working together. But that was really the primary place, because I was going for something different to illuminate that in each chapter. I mean, what I learned in doing a book, and I repeat, I've never done a book before. I've never written anything probably longer than 5,000 words, and that's even longer than most of what I've written. So I was blundering into this based on thinking, well, I've read a lot of books. I'm sure I can write a book. But what I realized really early, and it scared me to death, was that I had committed to doing a book that was going to be chapter after chapter of people saying what they thought about, do any human beings realize life while they live it every moment? And that was going to get really boring really fast. So part of how I chose the productions was there a larger story to them? And again, Miami New Drama production, very specifically, the idea of a trilingual production that reflected the community in which the play was being produced, with a defined mission to draw in audiences that it had not had before. That's the story of the Miami New Drama production, above and beyond the insights that people had to the play. The chapter on the production at Sing Sing, clearly that has its story, which is, what is it for incarcerated men to tell this story? So that was more of my process, was, as I said, not, is this the best Our Town? Not saying that any of them aren't, but what made this one interesting? There's a production in the book from the Looking Glass Theater in Chicago, which was a group of friends from college, and then friends they met right after college, and they formed a theater company. And 20 years after they were formed, they decided they were going to do a reunion, as much as they could, of the original members of the company, and they were going to do Our Town. Now, what's interesting about that, of course, is instead of being the 22-year-olds they were when they founded the company, everybody was around 40. So this was an Our Town where, not unlike school productions, everybody's roughly the same age, but everybody was roughly starting middle age. And what did that mean? To use this play as a reflection of their friendships and their work together and their shared history. So again, in that Our Town is always about a community. Where was community in each of these productions? Production at the Royal Exchange Theatre in Manchester, England was done, was put into that theater's schedule very hurriedly in the wake of the bombing at the Manchester Arena in April of 2017, where there was a suicide bomber just outside of an Ariana Grande concert. This was major news around the world. And the artistic director, Sarah Francom, said, we need a show that responds to this, or that reflects this, or that the community needs. And here she was in Manchester, England. And 4 months later, performances began for an Our Town, which was multiracial, was people from all over England using their own accents. There's no effort to say, oh, we're all from Manchester or we're all from London. And in one of the most interesting choices, she very intentionally cast a big, burly, if you didn't know him, somewhat threatening man of Middle Eastern descent to play the stage manager. Now, Yusuf's great, and he couldn't be nicer or warmer or anything else. But what did it mean at that moment in that community to place that man on stage guiding us through our town? Our town can take on a lot. So that's my long answer to a question that that someone sent in. Let's see. I guess we've got about 15 minutes or so more to go on this.
This is a moment for the Q&A. If people have questions, this is a moment to speak now. And we would love to continue the conversation. I have so many, questions as you were talking, Howard, about the, the uniqueness of every production. When you were doing your research of the 21st century, are there any productions outside of, the Anglo-speaking, England or America that you maybe you didn't write about, but came across as interesting?
Well, I have to say, I would have loved to do more international and non-English language productions. Frankly, it was a question of budget and capacity and everything else. There was a really interesting production based on photos of it. I can't read any of the press coverage on it because it's not in English. But there was a really interesting production in Tokyo in 2011, I believe. And the photos are really, really striking. And there's one that's clearly Act 3. And instead of having everyone in chairs, people were in square holes that were cut in the stage. And so you only saw them basically from what you see of me in this image. And the stage manager walked among them, but they truly were the headstones in the cemetery. And just from a visual standpoint, certainly, because I've looked at lots of pictures of our towns from before the period I covered and during, and that was a solution I'd not seen.
Yeah.
And yet completely in the spirit, because otherwise there's nothing on stage. So there's nothing else to distract you. It's just the people. But somebody even figured out how to do it without the chairs. Isn't that amazing? I saw photos. There was a production at Ford's Theater during the time period. I didn't include it, where the chairs were all suspended on the back wall and people were seated, like going up the wall. So they were facing you. They were simultaneously in their replacing the headstones as Act 3 asked them to do, but they were also in flight. They were also on their way somewhere.
It's a more hopeful, I guess. It's a more hopeful rendition than what the play,
It's hard to say because, again, I'm looking at still photos. I didn't see a video of it. I only saw certain lighting. Did the lights continue to go down on them? Did certain people get darker than others? That's where, and again, this is what was so interesting about your production. It's what you choose to bring into the space. This is true of any production, but what you choose to bring in our town can have such an impact on how people receive our town.
I think one of the most interesting things, because as you're talking about the chairs, I thought so much about what to do with it. At one point, I was gonna have a whole part of the stage kind of like come out and the dead people are gonna be sitting on the chairs that the audience were sitting. So it was a mirror to where the audience were sitting. It was a and we went with that for a while. And then at the end, I kind of, said, sometimes concepts that are too big and, they kind of hurt the story at the end of the day. That's just, but what I I ended up doing, which you know, it's really exciting. Solution was, you know, we didn't really take an intermission between the wedding and the third act, but in fact it became a party. So the wedding, you know, the stage manager, I don't remember the final line of the second act, but immediately after, music began to play, and the actors invited the audience to come in on stage, and we had a 10-minute party with singing songs, playing music, hugging, dancing, and then dramatically everybody sat down in the chairs, and it was very rough, and we didn't know what happened, and everybody kind of like felt embarrassed and went to their seats to sit down. And then the third act began, and you know, I think we were trying to capture exactly that dramatic shift that life gives you from happiness to sorrow.
Sure, but you made another choice with your set, and I'm curious to ask at Martin and Talise what it was like to play the scene. You didn't have George and Emily on ladders late in Act One. You actually had them sitting on steps that led into the audience. I've seen the photos. So they were able to play that scene really face to face. We didn't see them in, you know, we didn't necessarily see them in silhouette as if you had facing ladders.
Right.
And they weren't playing it pretending. You know, what was it to play that scene really probably more intimately, because it's not about scope when you're up on a ladder and up high, and the highest certainly people would have been in the original production, as Wilder thought it, but to play it low and to play it close.
Well, again, this was my first and only experience with Our Town, so it didn't occur to me there was another way or there was an original way it was done. But I think throughout the whole performance, the fact that the audience was so close and those steps kind of connected us to them. And at the end in the goodbye speech, like they were right there. I could see them. They, you know, we're all in the same world. It kind of made it, and we also brought them on stage with us for that second intermission, which was terrifying every time. But we were all in the same space. Like that was the world that we created. Those steps connected us to the audience, and it wasn't, you know, and Keith, who played the stage manager, he came in through the audience. He had been sitting with them at the top of the show. Like I came in through the audience for the wedding scene. Like we created a world where they were with us. Like we were speaking directly to them, and we were connected more than just on a proscenium speaking to nothing, you know.
What a great performance. Yeah. Keith Randall-Smith. I just want to you know, we haven't mentioned, it's so great that we haven't mentioned his name. You know, what an amazing performance. What an amazing American actor. Like this guy is, you know, everybody should know his name. He's a real hero.
Let's say it clearly.
Honestly,
we were talking about the importance of the stage manager earlier, and I just remember feeling so anchored by him because his presence and his voice and everything about him is just so anchoring in a way that we were talking about, like Emily and George. Like I feel like we could have been over here, and Keith just like brought it all down. And that third act is hard. It's hard to get into and hard to do that transition, or it was for me. And having Keith there, I always knew that I could, like that point of connect, like he would get me there, like he would anchor me so that third act could happen. So yes, Keith.
You know,
sorry, go ahead, Martin.
No, I was just gonna further. I would agree with that. Keith is this, like he's this boulder, this omnipresent being, and having him on stage was always super helpful. It was always he's become a bit of a friend and a mentor to me now, even after the production. Like he's one of the best human beings I've ever met.
And he made it look so easy. As I was rereading the play a couple weeks ago,
I know.
These monologues are hard. How did he do that?
Crazy. Yeah. He's telling me he was practicing all the time in the hotel room, and every time you start rehearsing, he's like, "Oh, I hope I get this." I'm like, "Wow!"
He's incredibly self-effacing. Actually, of all the people I interviewed for the book, Keith is one of the few people I've known a very long time. I've known Keith for about 30 years. And he's a wonderful guy. And Michelle, I was trying to find a quote that's in the book. Oh, here it is. I did find it. This is Michelle talking about Keith. He had everything: the empathy, the compassion, a little bit of an asshole. The stage manager needs from time to time to be a little bit of an asshole. So there's a description of the role and of the man who played it for you. This isn't my event to run, but as absurd as it seems, that seems like maybe a good place to go out, unless we have other.
This was such a lovely conversation. Howard, thank you so much. I can't wait to, like, I feel like I go every day to open the mail and it's not there, and I get nervous, and so I can't wait. Like, it feels like Christmas when I get out, devour it.
Well, thank you, and it's great. I mean, the fact that I did talk to everybody individually, it's now really fun to talk to people together, because I feel like I have these 115, or maybe because I knew a few people, 110 new friends, many of whom I've never been in the same room with, let alone in some cases seen face to face. So I'm gonna say two things. I'm gonna just give people the title of the book again, because I think it's a little blurry over here. Another Day's Begun, Thornton Wilder's Our Town in the 21st Century. And while it is on the side of screens, I'm going to read this so that Michelle doesn't feel he has to. If you enjoy this masterclass and have been enjoying the Mastermind series at Miami New Drama, please consider making a donation to support their programming by texting MIND to 56512 or visiting colony.org give-now. So
we have to have you here. We're gonna have to record this moment and just play it every mastermind class. Thank you so much, Howard. This has really been amazing, and we'll make sure that the book sells out for the next 2 years and they keep printing it.
They keep doing the play. I think I'll be in good shape.
Another conversation.
Thank you. And Martin and Talise, it's great to see you.
You too. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Happy to see both of you. Made my day.
Yay, likewise.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.